Prabhu, you have referred to the word truth, and so there is the truth, and there is the truth with a capital T. How do you grapple between these two, and how do you differentiate and make sense out of the existential question of the truth, such as, why am I here? Why do I exist?
Well, I think you're really asking two questions. One is there any relationship between the two? And the other is, how do you deal with the more difficult, profound, thoughtful, deep questions? Okay. Every human being starts with certain assumptions. You may start with the assumption there is no God, there is no truth. You may start with the assumption, well, there probably is something like truth. But whatever assumptions you start with, these assumptions will partly determine what things you choose to study. And they'll partly determine how you study them. Now, if you're intellectually honest, which is actually very difficult, we all like to think we're intellectually honest, but if you're intellectually honest, it may be that as a result of this process of thinking things through, even though there's selection involved, even though there is judgment involved, you may find that the facts that you're encountering are so solidly against your, or sufficiently solidly against your initial assumptions, that you're forced to revise them, you're forced to re-examine them and rethink them, which is what has happened to me several times. And I think that's great, but it's very disorienting, you know. You thought ABCD, you built your life on ABCD, and then you suddenly find, oh, actually ABCD may not be quite as valid as you thought. And if you do relate it not just to intellectual thinking and so on, but to your life and your values and how you live, then it can be quite personally disorienting, as I said. So there is that process that one goes through in terms of finding truths, if you want to look at it that way. And the relationship between truths and the truth is that, well, I guess it depends on your assumptions. If your assumption is that there is a truth, which is, as it were, truth with a capital T, some kind of absolute truth, absolute may be too strong a word, some kind of final truth, some kind of truth which is all beyond these truths, then you must believe that the truths reflect somehow or relate somehow to that truth with a capital T. But if you believe there is no such thing as truth, then of course the truths are just facts, and that's fine. And you may come up with theories and explanations and all that, but really it has no significance beyond itself. So I think there is a relationship, there must be a relationship. And a lot of scholarship today, I believe, has gone wrong because it assumes there is no such thing as truth. And that is an assumption. But how one searches for truth, assuming that there is a truth, or coming to the conclusion that there is a truth, how do you search for it? Is you do it in two steps or in two stages or by two processes. One is, for me, an intellectual one. I'm not saying it has to be for everybody, but if you're intellectually inclined, it has to be that way. And that is concerned with facts and concerned with intellectually consistent answers. But if you've gone as far as finding intellectually consistent answers, if you've gone as far as thinking things through in a way that is intellectually satisfying, or receiving from others things that are intellectually satisfying, then that is only one side of it. The second side of it is, I believe, deeply personal, spiritual, psychological, emotional, and that is actually encountering truth, and that is actually coming to terms with realities such as, I am not going to be on this earth for eternity. Death is real, what happens after death is real, and wrestling with questions like that is, of course, eventually an experience which is intended to be spiritual, relational, and so on.